Kind people are those who seem to always be ready to help others in any situation. They always have a special value in society, especially in today's world, where most people are busy with their own work and their own lives. Having people who are willing to stand by us with no expectation, to empathize and help us solve problems, is truly a great blessing. Now in this video, we're going to talk about one of these people, Robert Poynter, a man who is always ready to help others. But this self-sacrificing spirit of his caused him to get involved in a horrifying incident to happen. Hello, and welcome to the True Crime Channel.
The story goes back to September 9, 2016, in the north of the state of Texas, about 50 kilometers from Fort Worth, in a small town called Rockwell County.
This small town has only 120,000 people.
It still has lots of attractions, from different parks in the middle of nature to cafes and beer brewing factories in downtown. Jazz music is basically always heard on the streets of the city. There's also an annual wine tasting festival and lots of local barbecue events that people love. In this same lovely small town, the Poynter family lived. Robert and his wife Amy and their two daughters, Natalie and Nicole. Robert Louis Poynter was born on April 30, 1969 in Michigan. He was the first son of Robert and Mary Candace Poynter. When he was a child, his family migrated to Frisco, where Robert went to school, and there he met the love of his life, Amy, in high school. After graduation, he went for the Frisco Fire Academy and successfully finished his studies. From the very beginning, Robert loved his job. It wasn't just a job for him, but a love and real commitment with unpredictable incidents. With lots of effort and hard work, little by little, he rose in rank until he became a captain and took the main responsibility at the fire department, where he worked in the same place for 18 years, and always, just like the first day, he loved the work he was doing. All the people of the city and his colleagues considered Robert Poynter a reliable, hard-working, and self-sacrificing person.
They knew him in the captain position of the fire department. He had completely devoted himself to his community and his city, to the point that people had given him the nickname, the Gentle Giant. Because he was a very big man and his face looked a bit rough, people who didn't know him or ran into him would probably get a little scared. But the reality is that inwardly, he was a compassionate and kind person who had a big heart. Before he became captain in 2012, in 2005, he had voluntarily gone to Louisiana and helped for weeks in cleanup operations, and after that he also took part in operations for Hurricane Katrina, searched for survivors, and helped people as much as he could. As I said, Robert and Amy had known each other since high school. Robert loved his two daughters, Natalie and Nicole. He was one of those fathers who felt very close and friendly with his daughters. Overall, his family was more important to him than anything. Robert and his family, through all these years that they were living, seemed to have a calm, happy, and solid life. But, well, as you know, behind closed doors there can always be problems that others don't know about. Even in the happiest families, there may be things that aren't seen from the outside. Robert, in the eyes of others around him, was a caring and self-sacrificing father whose first priority in life was Natalie and Nicole. But in his relationship with Amy, for a while he had run into problems. Little by little, he was pulling himself back from Amy and their shared life. For example, before, he was always home for dinner because they had a family tradition to sit together every night and eat dinner. But gradually, he started long absences and didn't come to dinner anymore, which was really strange. On the other hand, Robert had generally distanced himself from Amy. Amy had noticed these changes. The peak of it was when one of their daughters found a second phone belonging to their dad, something Robert had never talked about. At that moment, Amy realized that something was off, and Robert was hiding something from her. Her sixth sense told her that probably there was another woman involved. And well, her guess was also right. For a few weeks, Robert had secretly gotten to know a 22-year-old girl named Jessie. Jessie was also from Roy and worked as a nurse. The two had met through a mutual friend, and from that very first encounter, it seemed their relationship was getting serious very quickly. Jessie later said that from the moment she saw Robert and talked to him, she couldn't separate from him anymore. Now here, there's a strange point. After meeting Robert and seeing him once or twice, Jessie would come to the fire station almost every day to see him.
This made Robert's colleagues suspicious of her because it seemed Jessie had become a kind of obsessed with Robert. Some of them even said, "It's like this girl is crazy sometimes." When Robert wasn't there, Jessie would stay at the fire station and ask his colleagues questions about Robert, personal things, his habits, his behavior, as if she was seeking to know everything about him. What was obvious at first was that the relationship between Robert and Jessie from the very beginning seemed one-sided. That is, Jessie took it much more seriously than Robert did. At first, Robert was a little hesitant and reacted coldly to Jessie's behaviors, especially that Jessie was coming every day to see him. Why did Robert now have a cold reaction to her? He had two main reasons. Robert still didn't know whether he really wanted to continue this relationship or not. After all, he had been married to Amy for 20 years and had 2 daughters with her. Second, the age difference between Robert and Jessie was also an important issue. Robert was 18 years older than Jessie, which by itself made him a bit more cautious. But in the end, despite all these doubts, Robert finally made his decision and entered into a relationship with Jessie. In early 2008, Robert and Amy officially separated. After the divorce, Robert still maintained his connection with his 2 daughters, Natalie and Nicole. He always tried, as much as possible, to spend time with them, but this issue was not pleasing to Jessie at all. She very quickly started to control Robert's life and tried to have him completely under her control. These behaviors drew not only Robert's attention, but also his close friends and even his family to her. One thing seen in many similar criminal cases is that extremely controlling people and those who play others first try to isolate their victim from others so that the person has no social support and gradually becomes completely dependent on them. Jessie was doing exactly this. Of course, she did not succeed in completely separating Robert from his family because Robert still spent time with his daughters and his relationship with Amy, his ex-wife, was also gradually improving. But this did not make Jessie abandon her plans. She still tried by various methods to control Robert's life. One of the biggest things Jessie insisted on was that Robert should marry her as soon as possible. She wanted to make their relationship official very quickly and take Amy's place in Robert's life. But Robert at first was hesitant and didn't do this. But a year later, that is, in May 2009, Jessie became pregnant by Robert. This issue made Robert finally propose to her. They got married 7 months later, that is, in December 2009, and in early 2021, their daughter was born, and her name was never made public. After their daughter's birth, life apparently was going well. Robert and Jessie and their daughter lived in a big house in the city of Roy. Jessie took care of the child at home, and Robert also still worked at the fire station. Everything looked good from the outside. But very soon, new problems showed themselves. Robert still had his good relationship with his daughters,
But only 3 years after the marriage, the relationship between Jesse and Robert ran into trouble. They no longer even slept in the same room in their big house. Each had their own separate area. Jesse later said in an interview that she always felt Robert never loved her like Amy, his ex-wife. He constantly thought that Robert regretted marrying her and that his heart was still with Amy and his previous life. This issue had put a severe psychological pressure on Jesse. It made her feel that this relationship was one-sided. Their relationship had become emotionally cold, but well, they still lived together. They had a mutual daughter, and Robert didn't want to fail in this marriage because of her. Although Robert had never directly said he was unhappy with his marriage, Jesse, on the other hand, in the following years, several times claimed that her life with Robert was a torment. She made strange claims, including that Robert had physical and psychological violence toward her. But the important point is, none of these claims were ever proven. No evidence, no witness, no sign that would confirm these words existed. Neither Amy, who had lived with Robert for 20 years, nor Natalie and Nicole, who were Robert's daughters, nor his colleagues at the fire department, nor his close friends, nor even people who had known him for years, no one had ever seen Robert as a violent and ill-behaved person. So why did Jesse make these claims? Did these really hold truth, or was it just a game? For example, Robert's older daughter, Natalie, a few years after her parents' separation, lived for a few months in her father's house and also saw the relationship between her father and Jesse. Natalie later also said that such a thing did not exist at all. Her father was inherently a very calm and logical person, someone who didn't quickly start shouting and didn't get angry, let alone do violent acts. In short, I must say that later 2 different narratives about Robert's behavior during the time he was married to Jesse existed. One was Jesse's narrative, in which Robert was angry and violent and very cold toward her, and the other was the narrative of all the people around Robert who told exactly the opposite. But maybe when you find out what is going to happen, you can have a better picture of Jesse and her personality, and as a result, decide better for yourselves which of these 2 narratives you believe more. In 2016, Robert and Jesse Poynter had been married for 7 years. Their little daughter was already 6.5. Both of them still lived in the same house that, after Robert separated from his wife, he had moved to. In the past 24 months, Jesse had changed a lot because she lost a lot of weight. Here we're talking about a 40-kilo weight loss. Aside from Jesse later claiming that Robert bothered her, she also said that Robert constantly criticized her because of this weight loss, that she was no longer attractive to him because she had become thin. Jesse apparently felt better about her new appearance than ever before, and from that time started to cheat on Robert. Even if Robert at first had no idea and hadn't realized that his wife was cheating on him, his 2 daughters, Natalie and Nicole, who still from time to time went to their father's house, noticed the change in Jesse's stepmother's behavior. For example, Jesse often left home very late and was out the whole night, and came back only in the morning. She did this more on the weeks and days when Robert had night shifts at the fire station, so that he wouldn't notice that Jesse had been out all night. Besides, apparently, she didn't care at all that their 6-year-old daughter would spend many hours, even sometimes the whole night, alone at home. Imagine that child was 6. Natalie and Nicole very quickly suspected that Jesse had a relationship with another man behind their father's back. They had even heard rumors that not just one man, but several men were involved, that Jesse was in relationships with them at the same time. The 2 daughters also found some messages and emails on Jesse's computer that confirmed this suspicion. However, when Nicole and Natalie asked Jesse why she goes out so late and where she stayed all night, Jesse claimed that she only goes to the gym. Of course, it's very strange that at 1 a.m., someone with makeup and stylish clothes would leave the house just to go to the gym. And of course, Natalie and Nicole did not believe this excuse of Jesse, and so they decided to tell the truth to their father. They told him about Jesse's behavior, about how they found out she goes out late, leaves their little daughter alone at home for hours, and comes back early morning, or even sometimes stays out until before Robert comes home. And at the hour she knows Robert arrives home, she quickly comes back in.
In addition, Natalie and Nicole told their father their suspicion about Jesse's possible infidelity and even showed him those messages they had found on her computer. After hearing these things, Robert got very angry, especially the fact that their little daughter was apparently left alone at home at night made him very angry. This issue led him to want to separate from Jesse and divorce her, but it didn't happen exactly that way. In my research, unfortunately, I couldn't figure out exactly what made Robert change his mind about separating from Jesse, but that's exactly what happened, because after he learned all this, he decided to continue his shared life with her and somehow fix the life again. But many of Robert's friends and family members who were in touch with him during this time believe that Robert only continued his marriage with Jesse because of his 6-year-old daughter, because apparently he didn't want to leave the child alone with Jesse at that age. Probably after the divorce, Jesse could have gotten custody of the child. In short, what happened was that Robert, who was already in his early 40s, still loved his job, but well, this job was becoming harder and more stressful day by day. Every day in his job as a firefighter, he faced lots of danger, and now another separation, another divorce, and probably a fight over custody of their mutual daughter with Jesse could again create a lot of trouble for him. So he didn't want to involve himself in this situation. Instead, he wanted to try to calm things down a bit. But despite this, after what he had now learned, he no longer trusted his wife, and this had consequences. Robert secretly installed several cameras in front of their house, including a camera right at the front door. This way, he wanted to make sure and have a video record that when he has night shifts, Jesse doesn't secretly go out again and leave the child alone, or not. In short, the cameras started working, and very soon they recorded something interesting. One late night, the doorbell of their house rang. In the video recorded by the front door camera, it was seen that Jesse, apparently very nervous and upset, opens the door and tells a man who was standing outside to go away. Robert also notices what's going on. He comes to the door too and wants to confront that unknown man, asks him who he is and what he is doing there at that hour of night. But that man kind of panics and quickly runs away. Later, it turned out this man was one of the many men with whom Jesse was secretly meeting. Robert now knew exactly what was going on in his house, and that his wife, despite the fact that he had decided to fix things with her, was still cheating on him, to the point that they brazenly even came to his doorstep and rang the bell. After this incident, Robert apparently started talking to some of his acquaintances and spoke with them about what was happening in their home. He wasn't the kind of person who would easily speak his mind and each time come and talk to others about everything that bothered him. But things had become so hard for him that he confided in several of his colleagues at the fire station with whom he had been close for years. As you can guess, his colleagues advised Robert to carry out his initial decision to separate from Jesse, because she apparently had no intention of using the second chance Robert had given her to change herself. When men are literally showing up at his door, it means their marriage has reached the end of the line. But Robert later told one of his oldest colleagues, who apparently was also one of his closest friends, that he wanted to try one more time to fix things with Jesse. His idea was that he, Jesse, and their daughter would travel together, the three of them.
Robert had planned to spend a few days in Mexico to just have fun there and away from home, away from family problems and others, hoping that he could persuade Jessie to change her behavior and talk about how they should proceed from now on. Apparently, he had the hope that maybe something would change there. They flew together to Mexico in late August, but Robert's hope to solve his problems with his wife was severely crushed there, because a few days after their arrival, Jessie, in the hotel room, spoke on the phone with one of the men she had relations with at home, which Robert happened to overhear right there. And right then and there, as one of his colleagues said later, it became clear to him that his marriage to Jessie had no future, and he was sure he wanted to separate from her. Look, if other people were in this situation, they wouldn't have let things get to this point. But, well, maybe he had his own reasons. As I said, his work conditions, the situation of his child, or maybe he truly, from the bottom of his heart, loved Jessie. In short, but it seems it wasn't meant to happen, because just 6 days after Robert Poynter returned from Mexico home and made this decision, he was no longer alive. Late night on September 9th, 2016, at 10:25 p.m., a call was made to the emergency center of the city of Roy. A woman was on the phone who apparently couldn't properly explain what had happened and why she needed help.
The sound of sobbing and gasping was heard on the phone, and she said a few other unclear things. Then, for no reason, the call was cut off. The emergency center was able to trace the phone from which the call had been made, so several police cars and an ambulance immediately headed toward a lonely road near Hunt County in the supermarket. The police saw a young woman who was completely nervous and terrified. One of the police asked her what happened. She said, "My husband came to help me and someone shot him in the head." That woman was 28-year-old Jessie Poynter, who led the police to a car that was standing by the roadside. In that car, they found Robert Poynter with a gunshot wound to his head. The emergency doctor could do nothing more for Robert. The bullet that had hit his temple at close range had done its job immediately. But here, something strange had happened. After the police searched the entire area around, they found Robert's Jeep on this lonely dirt road and took it to the impound lot. They took Jessie to one of the ambulances that was there. There she was supposed to say exactly what had happened and how they had shot her husband. But Jessie couldn't speak at all. She was breathing very fast and seemed unable to catch her breath. After they gave her some oxygen in the ambulance and she calmed down a bit, she was able to give a little bit of information. Jessie, in her first statements in the ambulance, told the police that it was late and she was in Hunt County while driving her own car. Her destination was a restaurant in the city called Check in the Box. She had a dinner appointment there with her husband, Robert. The reason for this dinner was because the two had had an argument a little earlier. Now they wanted to have a dinner in that restaurant and talk and straighten things out. Jessie continued saying when she was driving her car in Hunt County, she took a wrong road, turned onto this dark dirt road, and there suddenly lost her way. At one point, her car got stuck in mud and she could no longer go forward or back. She got very scared and therefore called her husband, Robert, and asked him for help. A little later, as Jessie continued to explain, her husband Robert arrived at the same place where her car was stuck in the mud. He got out of his car and helped her get her car out of the mud. After that, Robert got back into his Jeep to continue on his way. But at that very moment when Robert got back into his car and fastened his seatbelt, according to Jessie, a shadow came out from among the bushes out of the woods and shot Robert, who was now sitting in his car. After shooting Robert, according to Jessie, that unknown shooter, whom unfortunately she couldn't describe more than that, ran away, and she couldn't see him anymore. But even these first statements of Jesse in the ambulance about what happened weren't very logical, and the police there became very suspicious of her. Before we get to the rest of the story, please like and subscribe to support us. Thanks. To understand why the police now suspected her,
We're the area where Jesse's car got stuck in the mud, and where Robert was shot is about 30 minutes from the main road. And the dirt road where she got stuck in the middle of the night is usually only used by local farmers who pass there with their tractors. This road is not suitable for cars at all. Usually, drivers, even if they want to, cannot enter this road, especially at midnight. Another point is that Jessie grew up in this same area. She even knew Outside Roy well. When her goal was to set a meeting with her husband at a restaurant, why would she suddenly end up on a dirt road, especially when she could very easily return by the main road? Beyond all this, the story of that unknown shooter who suddenly sprang out of the bushes is very unbelievable. Why would someone at midnight, on a dark road in the middle of nowhere, hide with a gun in the bushes, waiting for Robert Poynter to pass by? Then, after Robert pulled his wife's car out of the mud, suddenly shoot him, then very strangely disappear back into the bushes, and even leave a witness there who might be able to identify him. That person, logically, should have shot Jesse too, and all this didn't seem logical to the police. Other events that added to this were her behaviors that I just mentioned. Even in the emergency call she made, which lasted only a few seconds, she couldn't give proper information. She didn't say who she is, didn't say where she is, nor what her problem even is. She later said the call was cut off because her phone fell from her hand. But her behavior overall, after the police and ambulance arrived, was strange. She was shaking in a very weird way, a tremor where her hands were constantly going up and down at the same time. She was shaking her head. Of course, in such situations where someone is apparently in shock, it's hard to judge whether this is an act or not. But even for the ambulance staff, these reactions were unusual. And what added to this was that Jessie was breathing very fast through her mouth. She was inhaling and exhaling. At first, one could interpret it as hyperventilating. But the strange thing was that she only breathed fast like this when she wanted to speak. That is, when the police asked her a question, she would start breathing rapidly and move her hands and head constantly. But when she wasn't being asked anything, she said very normally, and more or less her behavior was ordinary, without rapid breathing and without shaking. And this kind of doesn't fit together, because if such an incident has truly happened to someone, the person is really in shock and constantly shaking and anxious. But in Jessie Poynter's case, it could be taken that it's as if she has control over what she's doing, as if she knows when and how to act to show that she is now in shock. When we watch the videos that the emergency forces and police recorded there of Jessie, we become more convinced that Jessie is acting. What was also strange for the police there was that Jessie, despite the shock and the fact that she couldn't even properly describe that night in the ambulance, and even when she was sitting in the police car, suddenly started talking about her marriage with Robert, and that she wanted to separate from him, and that she had hired a lawyer for the separation. This is really strange when you think that Robert has just been shot, and instead of talking about the shooter and trying to describe him in any way she can, or give the police a lead about who might have a motive to do such a thing to Robert, she is talking about her plans to separate and about the problem she had with Robert. Jessie was interrogated for a second time at 2:30 a.m. First of all, the investigators wanted to know exactly where she had been before she got stuck on that dirt road. Jessie had claimed that she was on the way to that restaurant. Check in the box. One question that arises here is why they didn't go together. Jessie says before dinner with Robert, she had seen an acquaintance. This acquaintance was a man named Michael, who was 37 years old. When the investigator asked Jessie what relation she had with Michael, she said that she had a relationship with him. In fact, you could say that before she wanted to go to dinner with her husband, Robert, and talk about their life, she also dropped in on her boyfriend. The detectives and the team that were talking with Jessie at the police department suddenly told her that this story, especially the part where suddenly someone jumped out of the bushes and Robert was killed in his car, is not believable at all. They told her it's a lie, and they don't believe it. At first, she said that she didn't know that person and couldn't properly describe him, but it didn't take long and she told the truth. The detective very firmly and directly asked her, "Who killed your husband?" Jessie answered, "Mike." She meant Michael.
After the confession, Jessie tried to make her role in her husband's murder look smaller. First, she said that she didn't even know that Mike wanted to kill Robert. She was very shocked when she saw that Mike suddenly came out of the woods and shot. But when Jessie realized that this new story of hers was even more illogical than the first story, and the police didn't believe it at all, she suddenly changed her story again. This time she said that she and Mike were together. She confessed that she had gone to Michael's house and there they had a relationship. After that, they were supposed to go with Mike to dinner with Robert. That is, she wanted to take Mike with her to the dinner with her husband. When they asked her why, she said she knew that Robert wanted to separate from her, and she was afraid that after the separation, he might take their child from her, and that's why she had asked Mike to come along to dinner with her. She meant just as a kind of support. Mike accepted, but when Mike got into Jessie's car, he also brought a gun with him. Jessie said at first she hadn't even seen the gun, hadn't known that he got in armed, and likewise didn't know that Mike had a plan to kill Robert. After that, she said that luring Robert to that lonely road was all Mike's plan. That is, he had drawn up this plan to bring Robert there under the pretext that Jessie needed help, and there somehow confront him and scare him. Jessie finally said, "I had no fault at all. Even till the end, even when Robert arrived at the road, I thought that Mike was only going to talk with him. I had no knowledge of the murder or his murder plan." But when the detectives left Jessie alone in the interrogation room for a while, after these words, the camera that had been recording her words from the beginning recorded a scene in one part of the video. It is clear how Jessie puts her hands over her face and murmurs under her breath, "Oh no, what have I done?" It's strange that she asks herself this question, while just a little before she had said she hadn't done anything and that Mike had done everything himself. So why does she ask herself, "What have I done?" when according to her, she hadn't done anything? In short, after these words that Jessie spoke all night in interrogation that kept her in detention. The next morning, police went to Michael's house to arrest him too, but at that time he wasn't there. Michael had disappeared. But one day later, because the police pressure was very heavy and they were searching for him very seriously, Mike decided to turn himself in. He went to the police station and was arrested right there. Now both suspects, that is Jessie Poynter and Mike, are in detention. Jessie, besides Mike, also had other men that she had relationships and sexual affairs with. This was proven not only with the words of witnesses, but also with hundreds of emails and messages that were found on Jessie's laptop and phone. Besides this, it became clear that Jessie, shortly before Robert's death, had logged into several times to his email and Facebook. She had somehow found his password and from her laptop entered Robert's email and Facebook and could see who Robert was talking with. Later, police realized that a few days before he was killed, Robert had contacted a lawyer and talked with him about ways to separate from Jessie. And now that it became clear Jessie had logged into his account and read all this, a part of her motive became clear for police. Jessie knew that Robert wanted to separate from her, but when she realized that Robert had even talked with a lawyer, she became sure that everything was over.
In further investigation and interrogation, it became clear that Robert Poynter, a few months before his death, at his wife's Jessie's insistence, had registered her as the beneficiary of his life insurance for the amount of $685,000. That is, if Robert died, Jessie would get this huge amount. For police, this could be the second motive. An interesting point is that police from Jessie's Facebook messages understood that after a while, she started looking for men who could help her kill Robert. Now police's focus was on this subject. In total, there were 4. One of them was Mike, the same one who on September 9th killed Robert. As was clear from all their interrogations, some of them didn't even know that Jessie was married. She had told many of them that since 2014, she had been separated from Robert for 2 years, but Robert still threatened her, and she was afraid of him. In short, Jessie had told different stories to different men. Police also spoke with a man who, a few weeks before Robert's death, had suddenly appeared at their house and knocked on their door. The same man whose image, if you remember, the camera had recorded. That man's name was Brad. He told police that he had no idea Jessie was still married to Robert, because Jessie had told him she was separated. That's why Brad had no problem coming and knocking on their door. He only wanted to see Jessie. He wanted to visit her, but when he saw that Jessie pushed him away, he suddenly froze. In the end, Jessie chose Mike for her husband's murder. Because police read the messages exchanged between them, it was clear that he was the one most influenced by her words. It was also clear that Mike was the same one with whom Jessie had spoken on the phone in her hotel room in Mexico just a few days before Robert's murder. Police believed that the murder plan was drawn up right then. Now that Jessie and Michael are in prison, they are also charged with murder. Jessie was at first only charged with conspiracy to murder, but later the charge for both of them was changed to murder. In short, hundreds of people came to Robert Poynter's funeral, besides his ex-wife Amy and his 3 daughters. Firefighters who came from all over the state paid him respect.
Now, the prosecutor is preparing for 2 trials, and police are still searching for the gun with which Robert was murdered, because despite extensive searches, that gun had not yet been found. Even if the prosecutor has enough evidence and proof against these 2, showing the murder weapon to the jury in court is very important. 6 weeks after Robert Poynter's death, something happened that greatly helped the detectives. A farmer near the same road, the same place where Robert was killed, was working in his land when by chance he found a gun. Because the news of Robert Poynter's murder and that the gun had not yet been found was everywhere, that farmer immediately called police and informed them. Police quickly arrived there and seized the gun. After some tests, it was found that it was the same gun from which the bullet that hit Robert had been fired. The medical examiner who had carried out the autopsy had exactly the same opinion. Police also identified the owner of the gun from its serial number. The owner was a person named Matthew. Matthew was Michael's older brother who had lent the gun to him. Besides this, from examining Michael's mobile phone, it became clear that exactly at the time Robert was killed, Mike's phone had connected with one of the nearby cell towers. In short, the trials of Jessie Poynter and Mike were held separately. After Mike turned himself in, he never again spoke with the investigators and therefore never admitted that he had a hand in Robert Poynter's murder. But when the prosecutor showed all the evidence and documents that had been prepared before the trial to the jury, after 10 days of trial, it only took a few hours for the jury to reach a verdict. They sentenced Mike on July 20th, 2018 to 99 years in prison. On June 29, 2019, Jessie Poynter's trial also began. Here too, the jury saw and heard all the evidence and documents. Jeff Wad, state attorney, showed the jury the relevant evidence that Jessie had asked several men to help her in Robert's murder. Here, the jury, after 2 weeks of trial, only needed 4 hours to reach a verdict. Jessie was convicted of murdering her husband Robert,
and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 30 years. The money from Robert's life insurance after his death was divided equally among his 3 daughters. When I was researching this case, in many videos on YouTube, I saw that many people wrote underneath that Robert should have stayed with his ex-wife Amy, shouldn't have left her for Jesse, then now he would be alive and everything would have gone great. Sometimes I also saw sentences like this: "It's his own fault, it was his fate." I personally must say that these kinds of reasonings are a bit shallow, because this is a murder, and there are very few mistakes in life for which the price is death. Robert Poynter is dead. His life was taken from him in a very unfair and brutal way. Of course, Robert wasn't perfect. I mean, which of us is perfect? A person can have a very big heart, be an amazing father, save a child from a burning house, but still make mistakes in life. None of us are flawless. What do you think? In my opinion, there is no longer any doubt that Jessie was behind her husband's murder plan, and she was the one who brought Mike into this case, who in the end committed the murder. This is clearly proven. Therefore, in my opinion, both of them, that is Jessie and Mike, are exactly where they should be, that is, behind prison bars. Well, friends, we have reached the end of today's case. As always, I'm very eager to know your opinion. Please write your personal opinion and evaluation about everything I told you below in the comments section. It doesn't matter if it's against my opinion. In short, have a good day, and I hope we see each other very soon in the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves, and goodbye.
We often talk about those people who are just good, you know, the ones always ready to help, who stand by you, no expectations, just genuinely want to help. They're such a blessing in this often chaotic world, aren't they?
They really are.
Today, we're diving into a story that really makes you think about those qualities and how even the most generous spirit can get caught in something just unimaginable.
Yeah.
We're talking about Robert Poynter, a man people call the gentle giant.
That's right. And our mission here in this deep dive is really to peel back the layers, the complex layers of Robert's life and the tragic events leading to his death.
Right.
We're not just looking at the what happened, but really digging into the why. Why did people act the way they did? And the patterns that emerge.
Right.
Well, they're shocking. And offer some, frankly, sobering insights.
Robert Louis Poynter, born April 30, 1969 in Michigan. But his family moved to Frisco, Texas, and that's where he grew up.
For
You know, it was there he found his calling, joined the Frisco Fire Academy. Over 18 years, dedicated years, he rose up to captain.
Captain, yeah. Long career.
His colleagues, the community, they all knew him as reliable, hardworking, and just profoundly self-sacrificing. It wasn't just a job for him. It felt like a deep commitment. A real love, actually.
Absolutely. And that commitment, that kindness, it really defined his reputation, didn't it?
It seems so.
Which leads right into that nickname, the gentle giant.
Yeah.
Because physically, Robert was a big guy. Might have looked a bit rough, maybe imposing if you didn't know him.
Right.
But inside, genuinely compassionate, a heart as big as he was.
Can you give some examples?
Well, think about 2005. He voluntarily spent weeks down in Louisiana helping with cleanup operations.
Wow.
And then later, Hurricane Katrina search and rescue. He was just there helping as many people as he possibly could. That's the kind of person he was.
And this compassion wasn't just like for strangers or disaster victims. It went deep into his family life too, right? Family was clearly really important to him.
Oh, hugely important. Paramount, you could say. He had this incredibly close, really friendly relationship with his 2 daughters, Natalie and Nicole.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, the kind of dad who really saw them, understood them, was always there. And his connection with Amy, his high school sweetheart, his first wife, initially it was very strong.
High school sweetheart.
Yeah. They seemed to have this calm, happy, solid life, built a strong family unit. That was Robert's anchor, you know. And understanding that, him as this dedicated family man, it's absolutely crucial for understanding, well, everything that happened later.
But as we often find, even in families that look happy on the surface, sometimes there are cracks forming underneath.
That's right.
What were the first, maybe subtle signs that things were changing in Robert's marriage to Amy, despite how things looked?
Well, the initial signs were subtle, a kind of gradual withdrawal. Like they had this long-standing tradition, family dinners every night.
Oh.
That started to break down. Robert began having long absences, just not coming home for dinner anymore, which was really out of character for him.
That would be noticeable.
Definitely. But the moment things really shifted, the undeniable start was when one of his daughters found something.
What was it?
A second phone. A secret phone. Belonging to Robert, something he'd never mentioned. And that immediately made Amy suspicious. Her intuition just screamed that there was another woman involved.
And she was right.
Sadly, yes. She was right.
So the distance grew.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like there was a very specific reason. This secret phone, it led to a secret relationship. Tell us about Jesse.
It did. It turned out Robert had started seeing someone secretly, a 22-year-old nurse named Jessie from Roy. They met through a mutual friend.
Okay, Jesse, 22. Big age gap there, too.
18 years, yeah. And what's really critical here isn't just that she started seeing him, but how she went about it. Almost right away, she began visiting the fire station.
Visiting him at work.
Almost daily.
Daily. Wow.
Yeah. This kind of immediate, intense presence, the daily visits, asking his colleagues personal questions about him. It was a huge red flag. Some colleagues even apparently called her crazy behind her back.
Okay, so that was noticed.
Oh, yeah. It felt like an unusual obsession, almost. And the relationship seemed pretty one-sided from the get-go. Jesse seemed all in, very serious, very fast.
And Robert?
Robert was hesitant. You know, he'd been married for 20 years. There was that big age difference. He wasn't jumping in.
So the daily visits weren't just like enthusiasm. They were maybe a sign of something else, a push for control, perhaps.
It certainly looks that way in hindsight, that kind of accelerated intimacy, maybe even love bombing, as some call it, trying to establish intense presence quickly.
Right. And despite those red flags, Robert eventually did decide to fully enter into a relationship with Jesse. That led to his official separation from Amy in early 2008.
Correct.
What happened then? Did Jesse's influence grow?
It did, and this is where we start seeing those classic signs of coercive control really emerging. Well, Jessie didn't just want to be with Robert. She actively started trying to isolate him.
From who?
Friends, family, trying to cut off his support network. That's a key tactic, right? Chip away at independence, make the person more reliant on you.
Makes it harder to leave or even see the abuse.
Exactly. And she was relentless about wanting to get married.
He was still married to Amy at this point, legally? Or separated?
Yes, separated. But the push for marriage was strong. It wasn't until May 2009, when Jessie got pregnant, that Robert proposed. They got married 7 months later, December 2009, and their daughter was born early 2010.
Wow, that's a whirlwind. Separation, new relationship, pregnancy, marriage, baby, all pretty quick.
Very quick.
So how did this new marriage go? The outline suggests the peace didn't last long.
No, it deteriorated rapidly. Shockingly fast, really. Within just 3 years, Robert and Jessie were sleeping in separate rooms.
3 years. Already separate rooms.
Yeah. Jessie later claimed Robert never loved her like he loved Amy, that he regretted marrying her constantly, putting huge psychological pressure on her, she said.
Okay. And she also made claims about violence.
She did. Later on, she claimed physical and psychological violence from Robert. But it's really important to stress this. There was zero evidence. No witnesses, nobody, not Amy, not his daughters, colleagues, old friends. Nobody had ever seen Robert act violently. Ever.
His older daughter, Natalie, she spoke about this.
She did. Natalie confirmed her dad was a calm, logical person, not prone to anger or violence at all.
So these claims seem unfounded, potentially manipulative.
It certainly looks that way. Baseless accusations can be part of that pattern, trying to control the narrative or justify things later.
Okay, so fast forward to 2016, 7 years into the marriage. Things are clearly strained. Jessie had lost a lot of weight, about 40 kilos.
Significant change, yeah.
And she claimed Robert criticized her new appearance. But what were Robert's daughters, Natalie and Nicole, noticing about Jessie's behavior around this time?
They noticed a big shift. Jessie started leaving home very late at night. Sometimes she'd be out all night.
Especially when Robert was working.
Exactly. Especially when he had night shifts at the station. And what really alarmed them was her apparent disregard for their little half-sister, who was only 6.
She was leaving the 6-year-old alone.
Frequently. Left alone at home for hours, sometimes all night.
Oh my God.
It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It showed this Profound lack of concern for the child's safety. A huge red flag about her character. Maybe even a deeper callousness.
And they found proof of affairs, too.
They did. Found messages, emails on Jesse's computer. Confirmed she was having multiple affairs.
So Natalie and Nicole confronted Jesse. What was her excuse?
Oh, it was flimsy. She claimed she was just going to the gym.
At 1 a.m.
At 1 a.m., yeah. All dressed up, makeup on.
Right. Believable.
Exactly. The daughters didn't buy it for a second, so they decided they had to tell their dad.
Must have been tough.
Incredibly tough. But they showed him the messages, the proof.
How did Robert react? Especially hearing about his young daughter being left alone.
He was furious, especially about the neglect part. That really hit him hard. His immediate reaction was, "That's it, I'm divorcing her."
But he didn't. Not right away.
No. And it's not entirely clear why he hesitated. Friends and family mostly believed he stayed purely for his little girl.
Didn't want her left alone with Jesse, maybe? Or face a custody battle?
That seems to be the thinking. It's that awful dilemma, isn't it? Protecting yourself versus protecting your child, especially if you think the other parent isn't reliable. His fear for his daughter likely kept him there, despite the betrayal.
It's clear, though, even if he stayed, the trust was gone. Completely shattered.
Oh, absolutely.
And it took a pretty drastic step then, didn't he? Installing cameras.
He did. Secretly installed hidden cameras outside the house, one right at the front door.
Why? To catch her cheating.
Mainly, it seems, to have proof if she was sneaking out and leaving their daughter alone while he was on night shift. He wanted that video record.
And did the cameras catch anything significant?
Yeah. Very quickly, yes. A pivotal incident. One late night, the doorbell rings. The front door camera shows Jesse, looking visibly nervous, opening the door. There's a man standing there. She tells him to go away.
While Robert's home.
Robert noticed the commotion, came to the door, and confronted the guy.
What happened?
The man panicked and just fled. Turned out later he was one of the men Jesse was seeing.
Wow. Caught right on camera. At the front door.
Exactly. Not just proof of infidelity, but proof she was bringing it right to their doorstep. Any denial Robert might have clung to just shattered. Forced him to face the reality of her deception.
So the situation was just unbearable now.
Completely.
And even though he was a private guy, didn't usually share his problems. He started talking to colleagues.
Yeah, close colleagues at the fire station. He started confiding in them about the marriage problems.
And their advice.
Unanimous, follow through, separate from Jesse, get the divorce he'd already decided on.
But he tried one last thing first.
He did. Still holding on to maybe a tiny sliver of hope, or maybe just wanting to be absolutely sure for his daughter's sake. He told a close colleague he wanted to try one more time.
Wow.
Arranged a family trip to Mexico. Him, Jesse, their daughter. Late August.
Okay. A final attempt.
But that hope was, as the reports say, severely crushed. Just days into the trip, Robert overheard Jesse.
Overheard what?
On the phone. In their hotel room. Talking to another man, a man later identified as Mike.
Oh, no. Even on the make or break trip.
Exactly. It's that stark moment, isn't it, when even the last desperate attempt confirms it's over. That was it. That solidified it for Robert. The marriage had no future. He was getting divorced.
And then the police investigation, after the fact, uncovered some chilling motives for what Jesse did next. What did they find about her accessing his accounts?
They found she'd been repeatedly logging into his email and his Facebook. Somehow got his password.
So she was spying on him digitally.
Deeply. From her laptop, they could see she accessed his messages. And she discovered that just days before his death, Robert had contacted a lawyer about separation.
So she knew he was serious this time. Knew he was making moves.
Precisely. It wasn't just snooping, it was calculated information gathering. And it gave her a clear motive.
Yeah.
Stop the divorce before it started.
And there was another motive too, wasn't there? A financial one?
A huge one. Robert had, apparently at Jesse's insistence.
At her insistence.
That's what the investigation suggested. He'd made her the beneficiary of his life insurance policy just months before his death.
How much?
$685,000.
Wow. $685,000. Changed just months before at her urging.
It paints a very grim picture, doesn't it? Transforms that policy from a security measure into a powerful potential motive for murder. A really sobering point about how finances can be weaponized.
And she didn't just have motives. Police found she was actively trying to get help.
Shockingly, yes. Her Facebook messages revealed she contacted 4 different men trying to get them to help her kill Robert.
4 men, including the one from Mexico.
Mike.
Including Mike. He was the one she was on the phone with in Mexico. And he was the one who ultimately committed the murder.
And what was she telling these men?
False stories. Feeding them lies.
Yeah.
Claiming she'd been separated from Robert since 2014, which wasn't true. Claiming he was threatening her.
Fabricating abuse narratives.
Classic tactic. Manipulate others into helping. Justify the planned violence. Generate false sympathy. Deflect blame.
So this all builds up to the night of September 9th, 2016. An emergency call comes in at 10:05 p.m.
Comes from Jesse. And the call itself is chaotic. Marked by frantic sobbing, gasping for air. Her statements are unclear. And then the call just cuts off abruptly.
Chilling.
Police, ambulance, they're dispatched immediately. They trace the call to this lonely dirt road out near Hunt County.
And they find Jesse.
They find Jesse, terrified. She leads them to Robert Poynter's Jeep. And inside, Robert is dead. Close-range gunshot wound to the head. The emergency doctor couldn't do anything. It's just awful.
Yeah.
So in the ambulance, Jessie starts telling her story to the police. What was her initial claim?
Well, it was convoluted and immediately suspicious. She claimed she was on her way to meet Robert for dinner, at a check in the box, supposedly to reconcile after an argument.
Okay.
Then she says she took a wrong turn onto this dirt road, got her car stuck in the mud, and called Robert to come help her.
And then?
Then, she claimed, this unknown shadow just emerged from the bushes, walked up to Robert's Jeep, shot him while he was inside, and then just disappeared into the night.
Leaving her, the witness, unharmed.
Exactly. And the whole story was riddled with holes right from the start.
Like what?
Well, the location itself. This dirt road, it was like 30 minutes off the main highway, used mainly by local farmers with tractors, not suitable for regular cars, especially after dark, middle of the night.
And she claimed she took a wrong turn.
She grew up in that area. Taking a wrong turn onto that specific road, heading to a restaurant, highly unlikely. Just didn't make sense.
And the unknown shooter part.
Totally implausible. Think about it. Someone just happens to be hiding out there on that specific remote raid with a gun, waiting for Robert to show up. Shoots him, then flees, leaving the only witness, Jesse, completely untouched. It defied all logic.
And her behavior wasn't helping her story either, was it? Oh, even the paramedics thought something was off.
No, her behavior was deeply suspicious. During the emergency call, she couldn't give clear info, said her phone fell. Then when police arrived, there was this weird shaking.
Shaking?
Yeah, but it was described as a controlled tremor. Her hands and head only moved when she was actually speaking. The rest of the time, she sat normally. Even the ambulance crew found it strange, like maybe it was an act. And her breathing, too. Rapid breathing, but only when she was asked direct questions. It all pointed towards possibly fainting distress.
And what really raised red flags for the police?
What sealed their suspicion early on was what she started talking about. Instead of focusing on the shooter or providing details about the attack, she immediately started talking about her marriage problems with Robert.
Really? Right after he was shot?
Yeah. Talking about their issues, her plans for separation, hiring a lawyer. In that moment of supposed shock and terror, your focus wouldn't be on marital grievances. It was a huge deviation from how a grieving, traumatized person would likely behave.
So the police bring her in for more questioning.
Right. Second interrogation around 2:30 a.m. And that's when she first mentioned being with another man earlier that evening, Mike.
Before she was supposed to meet Robert.
Yes. She admitted having a relationship with him.
How did the detectives handle the unknown shooter story then?
They called her out directly, told her they knew it was a lie.
And her reaction?
Initially, she denied knowing the shooter, but she broke pretty quickly, confessed,
Just like that.
Well, then she immediately started trying to minimize her role. You see this pattern often.
Also?
First, she claimed she didn't know Mike planned to kill Robert. Then she changed it again, saying Mike brought the gun, Mike lured Robert there, it was all his plan. Trying to shift blame, control the narrative, even while confessing involvement.
But there was a moment. Caught on camera in the interrogation room.
Yes. A really damning moment. After claiming innocence, claiming Mike did everything, she was left alone for a minute.
Right.
The camera recorded her, clearly seen, putting her hands over her face, murmuring under her breath, "Oh no, what have I done?"
Directly contradicting her claims.
Exactly. Powerful evidence of her own guilt, in her own words, when she thought no one was listening.
So Mike gets arrested too.
Eventually, yeah. After intense police pressure, and the evidence against Jesse was just overwhelming by then.
Remind us.
Hundreds of emails and messages proving the multiple affairs, proof she'd accessed Robert's accounts, knew he was contacting a lawyer, and of course, that life insurance policy, $685,000. Clear financial motive.
That digital trail really painted a clear picture.
Irrefutable. Shows how those digital footprints, emails, messages, account access, they become powerful tools for uncovering the truth.
And the murder weapon, was it found?
Took about 6 weeks. A farmer working his land near the crime scene found it.
And it was the gun.
Ballistics confirmed it. It was the gun that killed Robert, and they traced its owner, Mike's older brother, Matthew. He'd lent the gun to Mike.
More connections.
Plus, Mike's cell phone records, pinged off a cell tower right near the crime scene at the exact time of the murder, put him squarely there.
So the trials followed.
They did. Pretty definitive outcomes. Mike had a 10-day trial in July 2018, sentenced to 99 years in prison.
99 years.
And Jessie Poynter, her trial was in June 2019, lasted 2 weeks. Convicted of murder, sentenced to life in prison.
With parole possibility?
Possibility of parole, but only after serving 30 years.
And the life insurance money?
That $685,000. It was divided equally among Robert's 3 daughters, Natalie, Nicole, and his youngest daughter with Jessie.
So, Robert Poynter, the gentle giant, known for his compassion, his self-sacrificing nature, meets this incredibly tragic end.
Yes.
It's just a profound, heartbreaking twist, isn't it? That the very qualities that made him so loved seem to lead him into a situation that cost him his life.
It really is. And it's common, maybe even easy, to hear people try to rationalize it somehow. Blame Robert, imply he deserved it for leaving Amy or for making mistakes.
Right, victim blaming.
Exactly. But we have to be clear. No mistake anyone makes in life justifies murder, period. Robert was human, he was flawed, like all of us. But his life was taken in such an unfair, brutal way. It's a really stark lesson, I think, about recognizing that even the kindest, most benevolent people aren't immune to predatory behavior. Sometimes that very kindness can be seen as a vulnerability to exploit. It's a dark irony.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for us listening? You've heard the whole deep dive into Robert Poynter's story, a man who gave so much of himself. When you consider that stark contrast, his generous nature versus the manipulation and deception he faced, what patterns do you now recognize? Maybe potential red flags in relationships that stand out more clearly now? And how might this story make us think differently about the struggles people face? The unseen struggles, maybe even unseen dangers, that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary lives. Something to really mull over.